So this week we're looking at a dynamic diagonal, so come and join me and see how the design comes together. Good afternoon everybody and welcome back again. It's so lovely to see you. Thanks very much for following along on my floral journey. It's really lovely to hear feedback each week after I've created another fabulous design. Now this week we're going to look at a diagonal flower arrangement, and it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It's an arrangement that comes diagonally through the middle of your container. I'm going to do it in a raised container. We've looked at this black vase before in a few different arrangements. I've realised today that I don't have a great deal of tall containers, so I think perhaps we'll have to go out shopping, find something new to use. Or if there's any sponsors out there who feel that you would benefit from promoting your materials on my channel, then please get in touch. My email address is on the website and I'm sharondower.com, and I'm quite easy to find. In previous videos, and I'll link them in the cards just above, I've shown you two different ways of attaching your floral foam into the container. Now I'm going to be coming diagonally, so I'm not too concerned about having a small piece of foam or a tall section of foam like I have in previous videos. So I've just used a bit smaller than a third of a block, and I am using floral foam. I'm trying to alternate videos each week so that you get to see something in a more sustainable and environmentally friendly version. But I know from the feedback I get, there's still a lot of you learning and training to use floral foam. So we've got the green floral foam, and because I'm coming diagonally, I'm going to use the smaller section of the foam at the front. So very much like when we did the crescent shape arrangement, because I'm coming diagonally, I'll need a larger section on the side rather than at the front. My floral foam is in the plastic container. The plastic container is attached to my glass base with some floral fixed there at the front, and I've taken the tape over the top of my foam, and that's just attached to the plastic container. I could have put the floral foam front to back, but I wanted a nice sturdy piece of foam this week, so that's why I've gone from side to side, although it will restrict some of the movement of the flowers on the side. Now, diagonal, I've just got myself a kebab stick. And if I show you the length of the kebab stick alongside the container, you'll see that it's the same size. So proportionally, I'm going to use the same size measurement to create that diagonal movement through the middle from one side to the other. Now my container is delicate, it's quite fragile looking, it's quite sleek, elegant. And those are the things that I need to consider when I'm designing and I'm considering the flowers to go in this particular design. So for me, it's a more modern, elegant style. And I think that if I'd use country flowers, lots of busy, small flowers, it really wouldn't suit the style of the vase. And that's what we refer to as harmony. And it's one of our principles of design. So this is my proportion. And again, that's another principle of floral design. And if you haven't learned about the elements and principles of design, and I quite often talk about them in the videos as I'm working my way through, I can link in the cards here, talk where I give a bit of an explanation on how the principles and elements work. And if you feel that you would like me to do a full practical tutorial where I explain the principles and elements of design, again in greater depth, you know the drill. Pop it in the box below and I can answer the questions, or we can do a pre-recorded video that you can take a look at. Right, so I'll go through the flower material as we go along, but I've gone with a cool colour combination, some zesty lime greens as well, something that we haven't done before. And I'm going to start with my foliage, and I have a gorgeous lime green conifer. Now this will grow quite happily in the garden. This one is Cupressus Goldcrest, has a fabulous lemon scent to it. I might have used it in a previous video. And it is a great foliage for creating curves. So if you're trying to do a crescent, a Hogarth curve, or you'd like a little bit of that movement, then the conifer is fantastic. And with the warmth of your hand, you can also manipulate it into the shape that you want it to go. And it's a good one for growing here in the UK garden. I get it from the local wholesaler, comes from a company called the Irish Green Guys. It's always superb quality, and the stems in the bunches are fairly consistent, so the sizes are very similar. These are going to be used to give me the horizontal movement, and I've also got some Pistache, which is a florist foliage here in the UK, but you could use any type of filler foliage that you might have in the garden, Pittosporum, Hebe even, and you'll see that I've picked it because it's got a beautiful colour contrast in shape and contrast in texture, and again, those elements and principles of design that I talk about frequently. Then I've got a conifer, and this is really going to be used just to fill in any gap, and you'll see that the shape and the texture is very similar. So using too many of this type foliage makes your arrangement very busy and very confusing. The colour is different, so we have a contrasting colour, but texture and shape is too similar for me. So therefore I would avoid using too many foliages or flowers that have a similar texture and colour. Let's get started. Now I would prefer to have some straighter pieces, so I'm just going to manipulate that in my hand to avoid it becoming too curved. I'm going to measure it to the side of my container, so it's a slightly bit longer than I would want it to be. So I'm going to remove some of the foliage there from the base. Remember, when you're flower arranging, you always need a clean cut on the bottom of your stems. If it's woody foliage like this one here, or if it's a woody flower, try and cut it at a diagonal. That means there's more surface area opened up for your flower. And it doesn't matter what angle you come across the design with your piece of foliage, but what you need to do is echo it on the opposite side. So we're going to come in from the side, making sure that's nicely secured into the foam, and then I'm going to repeat that on the opposite side, which will give me the outline of that colour shape. So again, I can use my container as a guide, or I could have measured two pieces to the same length before I started, and then I would know that the design was the same on both sides. Now this one is a front facing design. It's symmetrical, so it's equally balanced on either side, and I'm hoping that if we get this gorgeous lime green colour on the opposite side, my diagonal line is working well through the middle. Now for me, this piece here has had to sit on top of the plastic container. So for me, that perfect diagonal line is slightly off. So what I'm going to do with this one is move it slightly so that that diagonal line now is perfectly running from one side to the other. Otherwise, I had a bit of a staggered shape from one side to the other. So that's far better. And any small pieces that I've cut off, I'll use to link that colour together, because we want to bring the repetition of the colour and repeating the shape through the middle, so we don't end up with those wings flapping on either side. Now, don't forget, as we go along, we'll cover the floral foam on the side and on the back, but for a moment, I'm just going to concentrate on getting that outline shape into place and bring in some of this wonderful zesty lime green through the middle. Now the zesty lime green for me works with a few different colour combinations. It's very vibrant against my black vase. Works really well with tropical flowers. It's great with oranges and reds. It's fantastic with yellow colour combinations, particularly blue and yellow together. And I'm going to be using a white colour combination today, so it's going to be really quite classic and a very elegant. And this could be any type of foliage. It doesn't have to be conifer like me, but you're really looking to choose materials that are straight, something that's going to give you that real dynamic swoop from one side to the other. Now I know at the back of the foam there, you can see my mechanics quite clearly. You can see the floral fix that's holding my floral foam into place. But as we work along the design, hopefully we'll get that covered and you won't be able to see that ugly piece of mechanic. Now the side part of my plastic container is always quite hard to cover with this design, and that's hopefully where the larger pieces of foliage will come in. The pistache foliage will be much better there, hiding that section. Now what you can see here is I'm trying to link the colour on the outer edge by sweeping the green colour in through the middle. I don't want to fill out this section here. If I just use this as an example, I don't want to fill out this section here because I'm really going to lose that line running through the middle. So if you think of an arrow, a pointed arrow, or a straight line, bolt of lightning, then that's the sort of shape that we're trying to create. And I've used a raised container today because I think it's the easiest way of explaining this design. But I will probably do it in a basket, like a picnic hamper as well, because the design works quite well low down in a picnic hamper. And then you can see it done in a more country style, using maybe some locally grown flowers later in the summer. Okay, so let's get some of the colour in through to the back. And I mention it with every video, you are probably sick of hearing it, but when you're using a tall vase like this one, it's important to bring weight with your flowers towards the back to stop your container falling over. And it's also important because we create depth. And I'm sure by now you can say that in your sleep. If we think about those basic rules that I talk to you about each week, this is your height, even though it's on its side, this would be the height. The width of the arrangement is pretty tight underneath, and then the depth of your arrangement is from front to back. This design probably isn't the easiest of design to do, but it's all about picking the right material. It's about picking material that is straight, quite rigid and quite formal. If we have materials that have bends and twists and turns in it, then you're not going to get that straight, elegant shape that we're trying to create. And that links quite well to my next material. Now we're going to start by introducing a wonderful blossom. So this is one of the Prunus family. It's quite a small, delicate flower. And the benefits of this for this design is, of course, it has beautifully straight stems. So I'm going to now make sure that it isn't too long because I don't want to go outside the outline shape that I've already created. And I'm going to do 2 on opposite sides. So one on the taller section and one on the lower section. And you can see that I'm reinforcing that diagonal line from one side to the other. And then I'll use the other materials to link through the middle and bring that colour all the way through. So linking them together is rhythm and repetition. It's making sure that your eye can travel from one side of the design to the other. And when you're learning basic floral design, I always think that it's far easier to learn the basic rules. Then when you become more confident in what you're doing, you can go a bit wilder and a bit off-piste. But for now, quite a formal design, but brilliant if you're learning flower arranging. Now you can see hopefully the white sweeping from one side to the other, and I've left myself this final piece of blossom, and hopefully you can see that this is more oak. There is more colour showing in the white buds. So if I was to use this on the outside, this side of the design becomes very heavy. So rather than make the design visually unbalanced, I'm going to use the bigger of the blossom in the centre section. And again, I know there's still floral foam showing at the front, but we'll work on that as we go through. With a design like this, the crescent shapes, the Hogarth curves, often it's easier to fill your foliage in at the end because sometimes you're using a smaller piece of foam to insert the flowers in. Very much like when we did the crescent shape, if I had a large piece of floral foam here in the centre, I would need to keep adding more and more material, more flowers, more foliage, until I'd covered the foam in the middle. But I've almost achieved coverage or even coverage with just that one type of foliage. And that's really about selecting the proper materials and the correct materials in the very beginning. Now then, let's have a look where we're going next. Now, we've seen some pussy willows before. The stem of these isn't black, it's a very dark brown, but it's going to give a bit of a connection between my base at the bottom. And again, I don't want to go too long with the pussy willows because my foliage outline has already been formed, but I've chosen them because they're straight. It's what we refer to as a linear flower, so it's going to give you those lines that you need to make your eye travel from one side to the other. And I'm almost trying to follow the shape from one side. And by that I mean, if we follow the line of this pussy willow here, hopefully it follows through to the one there on the bottom. Now I'm going to add 2 more in to bring that colour and the texture through to the front. And you can cut these down short because you can use one stem to get you 3 placements. So don't worry if you're cutting them shorter to come towards the front. So how's that coming along so far? We've got hopefully the white colouring swooping through from one side to the other. Now I'm going to start introducing some of my fresh flowers, and I've got a Freesia. Now I love Freesias. I think every week I say this is my favourite flower, but I really do like the Freesias. They've got a bit of colour showing in them. These ones are florist bought Freesia, so these are ones that have come through the flower auctions, so they are quite a good quality Freesia, and they have a very long stem. But I know at the moment, so again we're filming in February, I had to think about it then. There are lots of Freesias at the moment in the supermarket, and you might even have them growing in the garden if you're lucky enough. So you'll see I've started with almost that same sort of placement, but this time I'm using the Freesia on the outside, and I'm trying to repeat the shape on both sides because it's a symmetrical design. But I don't want to have them in perfect positions. And then I'm going to continue the line all the way through the middle. And at this stage, this is a good time to explain to you, and this is a good chance for me to explain to you why we put the focal flowers towards the middle, the bigger, more dominant flowers towards the middle. If I was only using Freesias, and that was the only 2 stems of Freesias that I had, it makes your eye pick up the 2 Freesias on the outside, and there's no link in colour or texture or the same flower shape in the middle. So it makes this part of the design and this part here more dominant than the middle part, which is our focal point. And that is relevant in traditional floral design. If you're looking back at historical flower arrangement, the rules are slightly different. So it really depends on the flower arrangement that you're making and what's inspired you, whether you're following sort of British traditional rules, whether you're making your own up, which is fine. I don't mind you doing that. And now I'm going to start linking together the Freesias to bring a line through the middle of my arrangement. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And what I also like about this particular design is we're not overcrowding the flowers, so you can really appreciate those delicate, dainty Freesias. We don't want to hide them. It's such a pretty flower that we really need to be able to show them off. And I don't want to overcrowd them. I am going to add another flower type in, but if you can imagine a mass design with these Freesias in, you're almost going to lose that unique, beautiful flower head. And they're also perfumed, so we have the added bonus. Now hopefully you can see the link of the white colouring, and this section in the middle here, which is my focal point, needs to be reinforced. I've got to try and remember that the camera angle is different to the position I'm looking at it from. So I need to make sure we've got a flower there at the base. Otherwise you'll all be moaning that my floral foam is uncovered. Right, so what do we think of that? My larger Freesia has been used at the focal point, and I've got a beautiful, elegant line, well at least I hope I have, from one side all the way through to the other. Now to reinforce my focal point here in the centre, I'm going to add another flower in, and I've got a choice of 2 flowers. and you can have a guess at home which one you think I'm going to choose. I have a white rose, beautiful large white avalanche rose, or I have a green dianthus. Now this is a carnation. If you haven't seen it before, this is a green, it's called Green Trick, and it's a fabulous green carnation. This was my original choice because I thought it was going to be a really good texture alongside the Freesia. But if you can work it out, it's very, very similar in texture to my lime green foliage, and it's going to really compete for attention. So instead of using this, I'm going to swap it and use a white rose. So my plan doesn't always work. There are often times where I have to change my plan at the last minute. And sometimes until your design evolves and comes together, you don't really understand how strong those textures are going to be. But for me, it was far, far too complicated and too busy, and it was going to spoil the overall effect of my design. So the white rose is just going to be added towards the focal point. I'm not going to over clutter the design. I'm slightly moving one of the blossom to make room for my rose. But for me, the rose is a far better choice. It's big and bold, and it gives me a much better contrast in shape, colour and texture against the very fussy foliage there at the back. Now my final rose, I'm hoping, is going to come towards the front. And they're only short, we don't need to have them too tall. I might have to move the front Freesia just to give me a little bit more room, because of course my plan was to put the Green Trick carnation in there. So I need to give a bit of space between the flowers. But what do we think of that one? Is that something that you'd like to have a go at home? I'm just going to finish up now with the pistache foliage to make sure that my floral foam is covered at the back and that I've got a slightly different contrast in colour. The lime green is very, very vibrant. This would work really well in quite a modern hotel where you had that monochrome colour combination. You could of course do it in any colour combination because the vase is quite a neutral colour. And if you have any foliages that you could spray paint, so you could use a black spray paint to add some colour to some twigs or some branches. You might have some black accessories at home. They would also work really well being incorporated into the design at this stage. Back of my foam is almost covered, and you'll see that I haven't gone too flat there. Again, we're trying to aid the three-dimensional effect. We want to avoid the flower arrangement becoming too flat. The side here, I can still see my floral foam, but I need to be quite careful placing the greenery into this section here because I don't want to lose the shape of the arrangement. So if I overfill, I will lose that clean diagonal look on the side, but I also need to make sure that that plastic container is hidden there on the side. And if you don't have the foliage like I have here, the pistache foliage, ivy leaf would be great there on the side. Don't forget, if you've really enjoyed this video, to give me a comment in the box below. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial. My plan at the moment, which is quite successful at the moment, is that I upload a video on a Sunday at 3 o'clock. If we've had weddings, then that video might be a little bit later in the day. And we also upload on a Tuesday. That's the quietest time of the week for me here, where I don't have too much weekend wedding work to work on. But I hope you've enjoyed that one. That's the diagonal. Have a go, have a practice, but be selective in your flower choice. Make sure you have nice, straight, rigid pieces of flowers and foliage so you can get that elegant line to sweep through from one side to the other. So thanks for watching. It's lovely that you keep coming back time and time again. Bye for now, and we'll see you very soon.